Hey, how you doing there? I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the bees that we have at B&S Farm. So, there's a bee home that's right next to the plant beds. And this is a bee home for solitary bees. Solitary bees mean these bees live alone. They do their thing alone. They don't live in a beehive or a community. They live in a bee home. And right now there's mason bees flying around. Now, what does mason mean? Mason means mud and stone and rock. So somebody who is a mason, they work with stone and they can carve it and they can be an artist. So that's what a mason is. Well, mason bees use mud for something really interesting that I'm going to tell you about. Now, in this bee home, there's like these tube things. And if you look inside these tube things, it's really fascinating what actually happens inside these tube things. Let me show you. Let me show you what happens inside these tube things. So, a mason bee kind of looks like this. Here's an adult mason bee. Yeah, it's got that pollen on it. So that's what it looks like. And inside the tube, the adult female mason bee, because the female does like practically all the work. The male just mates with the female and then dies. The female does a lot of work. So what does the female do? Well, it goes around, collects pollen, collects nectar, that's sweet, juicy stuff that's inside of flowers and plants, collects nectar and pollen, a lot of it, a lot of pollen on its hairy body. And it comes back to the bee home, the tube, and then what does it do? It mixes the pollen and the nectar with its spit to make a kind of dough, like a bread dough, like a pizza dough, and it mixes the spit and the nectar and the pollen, and then it puts the dough down in the bee home, like, and then after it puts the dough down in the bee home, the female lays an egg. But then the female is not done. It goes out, and then it goes and gets some mud, and it comes in and it takes the mud and it builds a wall, so that the egg has its own room inside the bee home. Isn't that like kind of really cool? So the egg is there on the bee bread, and remember the bee bread is like a doughy food. It's like a food for the baby. That's nectar and pollen mixed together with some bee spit. Yeah. So it does the same thing. It makes that bee bread from pollen and nectar, and then it lays an egg. And then it goes out, and the female collects mud, and then it brings the mud back, and it builds another wall. And it keeps doing this. Food, egg, wall, food, egg, wall, until the whole tube is full of eggs, each one with their own room. And so then what happens? Well, the eggs hatch. And when the eggs hatch, it's not like a bee comes out of the egg. No, it doesn't work like that. When the eggs hatch, what comes out is this wormy thing. Because the wormy thing, which we call larva, is like the baby bee. It's like the baby bee. It doesn't look like a bee yet. It's like a larva. And insects are so interesting because the babies often don't look like the adults. Just think of like caterpillar is like a baby butterfly, and a caterpillar does not look like a butterfly. It's like crazy. So anyways, the larva comes out of the egg, and then what does it do? It eats the bee bread, the food that the female had left for the egg. It eats it, and it grows bigger. And look, now it's a bigger larva. It's bigger. And then what happens to the larva? It starts to change. And it becomes a pupa, and it kind of wraps itself and it becomes like a mummy. And a pupa is right there. And inside the pupa, the bee, the adult bee, the larva changes into the adult bee. So the wormy baby bee became a pupa, and inside the pupa, it changes into the adult bee. Yeah, you're thinking kind of like a caterpillar, which becomes a chrysalis. And then inside the chrysalis, the caterpillar changes into a butterfly. Yeah. Similar with the bees. Yeah. So anyways, what happens? That adult bee doesn't come out of its cocoon. No. You know what it does? It hibernates all winter long. so that adult bee inside of a cocoon doesn't come out. It hibernates all winter long, kind of like the bears in the cave. And then when spring arrives and it gets warmer, the adult bee chews its way out of a cocoon. And let's see that, because Johanna videoed that.